you want to tell me a little bit about your involvement with the creative arts in Teesside?
Yeah, so I've always been an overall creative, but starting about last year time, my like fine art background kind of went more into like the digital side and like coalescing with the music scene and like gig photography and stuff. So that's kind of been my like driving force with like the public eye. So yeah, I've been doing a lot, and as that's been growing around Teesside, my art has been growing a bit of a base as well. So it's a bit of digital illustration, graphic design, photography, just creative stuff in general, which is always a plus.
Brilliant. So are they like solo exhibitions that you do, or do you do?
Yeah, for the most part, most of my stuff is like it's 80% me, 20% collaborating when I can. But that is something that moving forward in the future, I'm looking to kind of branch out and do a bit more with fun people. But the base camp venue is where I do a lot of my collaboration, and the sidecar practice space. So yeah, that's kind of the plan with that.
So because I haven't interviewed Aaron yet, can you tell people a little bit about Sidecar?
So Sidecar is a brand new practice space that Basecamp have opened. That was kind of rented to one specific band, but we kind of decided as lockdown came that it was something that we could really renovate and use as a project to keep us going. So we've kitted it all out with gig posters across from like the decades of Middlesbrough and the Northeast. And it's just a place for bands to kind of have somewhere to enjoy and use as their space. Pretty good.
A band club.
Yeah, pretty nice. I wish I was in a band, but we'll see.
I seem to have accidentally joined a band yesterday for the first time in a long time.
Fair enough. Why not?
I'm just as musically ungifted now as I was then. So
you never know. Practice. Use Sidecar.
So, have you always been involved with the arts? Is that something you grew up with?
Yeah, I've always been a creative kid. I've always, had a pen in my hand, and even in school, like I took it at GCSE and A level, and now my degree is graphic design with marketing. That's what I'm doing full time. But it's kind of from June last year, I got in touch with Aaron, and that's where I've kind of put it in the public eye. But yeah, the arts has always been something that's inspired me and kept me motivated and sane. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of one of the questions that I'd like to get onto about the idea that other than producing art because it's going to be in a show, what art brings to people just as part of their daily lives, and how it can affect people that aren't interested in the arts to have it introduced to them by community art organisations.
Well, I think art is in everything that we see, and I think people who aren't creative kind of miss that. Like, TV, advertising, art is everywhere, and it's something that people probably consume and don't realize they're consuming if they're not creative. So to kind of continue to push that, whether that's in a local, vicinity, or whether it is on a wider scale, it's something that we all probably do and don't think about. So I think that, like if we bring our community to more people, and whether they are creative or not, it's something that will be seen and something that will like involuntarily be enjoyed. So
Yeah. I've been quite interested in seeing this week the difference in generations. Like when I was growing up, it just wasn't seen as, art wasn't seen as something that you could do. I was told to do all the sensible subjects, and I did. And I just had to kind of get a job to help really. And I'm just wondering, were you encouraged to try and make a career in the arts? Did you try and get you to become an accountant like me?
Yeah, I think the downfall is that in school I was like academic, but I also was artistic. So there was like you can enjoy art, but you should probably go this way. And I think for a long time there was a turmoil in that, like, do I, sit back on my creative energy and put it all into, doing law or doing medicine? But then I think eventually if you start to struggle with that, you do kind of choose your path in certain ways. And I think that as I've gotten older, you just embrace it. And I think, again, as I have gotten older, time has made me realize how important art is anyway. Like, it's such a big platform and it's so vital in everything. So yeah.
Great. So, I mean, looking to the future, do you hope that that's going to be a way of earning your living, and would that be something that you would enjoy?
Fingers crossed,
And
yeah.
how do you like? Do you have some kind of compartmentalization of the work that you maybe do commercially
Mm,
and
mm,
your own art that you produce for yourself?
Well, I think before lockdown, I was feeling quite burnt out anyway in the work I was doing for other clients. There's a lot of client work that like I am not allowed to talk about because it's like above me kind of thing, and that was becoming very commercial. But because of such a big break, I've found enjoying art for myself again as well. So in the future, it would be amazing to keep that as like a balance. I think I've thrived in lockdown, which some people haven't. But yeah, that's definitely the plan, and hopefully it can be sustained as long as possible. I've only been doing this for a year in a public sense, and like this time a year ago, I hadn't even took a commission. So it's hopefully just going to keep going up and up. We'll see.
Yeah, last year was the first time I ever got a commission, and
Mhm.
it's quite interesting to think of. My mentor was a theatre director called
Right.
Campbell, and he used to go on these big rants about funding and funded theatre being
Mhm.
exactly that, funded, and
Mhm.
that no one should ever get any grants but then he also had this other rant that he used to go on about you've got to get a commission. Like, yeah, where to navigate throughout that, but it certainly has been a very positive thing in
Mhm.
experience, and it's kind of one of the reasons to do this project with so
Mhm.
many people that are hoping to get funding
Mhm.
point, because without that initial step of being indirectly funded, then
Mhm.
you haven't got any kind of historic record. So
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
something that I hope to give to people, even 20 quid's neither here nor there, but it's kind of like someone actually wants to sit and talk to me about what I do, and the kind of validation that gives you. I think
Definitely.
it's the same as, if you have had money off the Arts Council, um, you know, in something like this, I'd definitely seek funding, because I'm not ripping my soul. Well, I kind of am. It's like, you do realize how much you put into a project like this. But
Mhm. Mhm.
like my plays, I mean, they would never be funded. I wouldn't want to write them in a way in which they'd be funded. So I would seek money for that,
Mhm.
this kind of work, supporting other artists.
Like, it's lovely. I think that like the art community is a community, unlike a lot of other industries. I think other industries could be seen as quite cold, but I think artists all seem to know the same kind of struggles, maybe in their own different way. But I think that like because of that, I think we're such a empathetic and kind. We all just want to support each other. I don't think it's particularly competitive, which is another good thing.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Been interesting throughout this project, seeing people that have not had such a good time of it and not got any funding, and people that perhaps have never even thought about getting funded, that have been ploughing their own money into the creative arts, subsidizing the arts out of their own pocket, their own poverty, really, for decades here. And I think because of that, there has built up that support network amongst many people, because there's no help being coming in from the outside.
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
so whatever people might say, it's terrific if money can facilitate those kinds of people being able to be involved. Because again, with when I worked with Ken, because it wasn't funded in any way, it meant that anyone involved, it was going to cost you a lot of money to be
Yeah.
involved, because it's not only your time. I mean, it was a 24-hour long play as well, so
Wow.
quite a big commitment.
Yeah.
And really it meant that you had to be, it was predominantly white wealthy people that
Right.
members of the cast, because they can afford to not be paid
Hmm. Hmm.
to do theatre work. But and again, like my plays, that you couldn't fund it. There's just, it's 46 characters in one play. It's like
Wow.
So it has to be done in that old DIY style. But I think if funding allows people that would otherwise have to go and do other jobs to free up their time to get work done, then I'm all for it.
Me too, I agree thoroughly.
Absolutely. So checking the rest of my questions. And what about influences or people you looked up to? How were there people that were artists or involved in the creative arts that you saw and inspired you to take up your practice?
I think it's probably going to sound quite stereotypical of someone like quite young, but my art teacher was a big drive in school. The school that I went to wasn't particularly arts based, it was more academic based, so it was nice to have someone to kind of allow me to go away from the mainstream. But in terms of inspirations, Gemma Jelf at Basecamp, she's fabulous. She's such an amazing fine artist, and she just has her own style, which I love. And also Aaron was a big inspiration for my own motivation too. I'm trying to think of other people. A big inspiration who isn't around anymore is on my arm is the hokusai, however you want to say it. So it comes from all over. I did come from that fine art background of painting and stuff, but graphic designer wise, there's some amazing people on Instagram. Dan Barkle, he's amazing. He's from the South, but he does some good stuff. People like that, just everyone. I think art is just such an inspirational thing. Yeah. Bad answer, I know.
No, it's not a bad answer at all. I think it's absolutely tremendous if you can take inspiration by just the people around you, you know, being inspired by your peers, I think is the best kind of inspiration you can have. Yeah, that's one, you know, it's kind of this part of this project to make as many creative artists in Teesside aware of one another as possible, to allow that kind of cross inspiration and cross collaboration.
Definitely, I think that'd be a big thing for me moving forward. Is I see so many Teesside artists on social media, and I'm just like itching to look at them. Like John, I forgot his name. Pink. He paints loads of pink things. John, I can't remember his last name. But then there's Bethany Hunton as well. She's a fine artist who just looks like amazing stuff. So I think it's just that connection that's like the next part for me and stuff like that. So.
Brilliant. Well, I normally finish off with a lockdown question, but you've kind of answered that. That was, yeah, I think quite a lot of people have felt the same, that it's kind of given them breathing space in many regards to, you know, obviously it came at a bad time, I think, for Teesside because things be really taking off, but it has given chance for people to sit back and think and plan for the future.
Definitely. Also, like I'll start my uni course again in September anyhow, so that's kind of a thing moving forward. So like lockdown like will affect that as well, so it's again trying to strike that balance between my like actual work life and then the work that I want to be putting out and making a living from eventually. So watch this space, we'll see how that balances out.
Absolutely, I think that's the line we all try and dance.
Definitely. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, it's been lovely speaking to you, and hope to see you out there in the real world in the not.
An elbow bump or a socially distanced handshake.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye bye.